The Christmas lights blurred through. Sarah's tears as she pushed through the crowded restaurant door, leaving behind the worst blind date of her 32 years. Behind her, Marcus was already scrolling through his phone, probably texting his friends about the awkward librarian who didn't meet his standards. She'd barely made it through appetizers before he'd made it clear she wasn't thin enough, successful enough, glamorous enough. The rejection stung like ice against bare skin. But it was the pitying looks from nearby diners that made her want to disappear into the snowy December night. Sarah had almost convinced herself to feel nothing, to let the numbness of disappointment wash over her like it had so many times before, when small fingers tugged at her coat sleeve. "Excuse me, miss? Are you crying?" She looked down to find a little girl, no more than 6 years old, with dark braided hair and eyes that held far too much concern for someone so young. The child wore a red velvet dress that had seen better days, the hem unraveling slightly, and she clutched a stuffed reindeer missing one antler. "I'm okay, sweetheart," Sarah managed, quickly wiping her eyes. "Just having a silly grown-up moment." The little girl studied her with the unnerving perception that children sometimes possess. "My daddy says it's okay to cry. He cries sometimes too, especially at Christmas." Something about the girl's matter-of-fact tone made Sarah's heart clench. She glanced around the restaurant's waiting area, looking for a parent. "Where is your daddy, honey?" "He's getting our table. We're having a special dinner, because it's just us this year." The girl's voice dropped to a whisper. "Mommy went to heaven last Christmas Eve. Daddy says she's watching over us, but I think she might be too far away to see good." The simple, devastating honesty of it hit Sarah like a wave. She knelt down, bringing herself to the child's eye level, her own problems suddenly feeling very small. "I'm so sorry. I bet your mommy can see you just fine, and I bet she thinks you look absolutely beautiful in that dress." The little girl's face brightened. "Really? It was hers when she was little. Grandma gave it to me." Then her expression turned thoughtful, almost calculating in its seriousness. "What's your name?" "I'm Sarah. What's yours?" "Emma Rose Patterson." "I'm 6 3/4. She said it with the precision of someone who counted every month. "Why were you crying, Sarah?" There was something about this child's directness that made lying impossible. "I was on a date with someone who wasn't very nice to me." Emma's eyes widened with indignation. "That's mean. My daddy would never be mean to a lady. He opens doors and says please and thank you and everything." She paused, then grabbed Sarah's hand with surprising urgency. "You should meet my daddy." Before Sarah could respond, a man's voice called out, strained with barely contained panic. "Emma!" "Emma, where did you—" "Oh, thank God." A man rushed toward them, and Sarah found herself looking up at someone who appeared to be hanging on by a thread. He was probably in his mid-30s, with tired eyes and disheveled dark hair, wearing a button-down shirt that looked like it had been ironed by someone who'd forgotten how. But it was the relief and exhaustion on his face that struck her most. The look of a person doing their absolute best and still feeling like it wasn't enough. "I'm so sorry," he said, reaching for Emma's hand. "She's been having some boundary issues lately." He shot his daughter a look that tried to be stern but melted into pure love. "Emma, you can't just run off and bother people." "I wasn't bothering. Sarah was sad and I was helping," Emma protested. Then, with the fearless audacity that only children possess, she added, "Daddy, this is Sarah. She's really nice, and someone was mean to her and she needs to have dinner with us." The man, Emma's father, looked mortified. "Emma, that's not— we can't just—" He turned to Sarah, his cheeks flushing. "I'm so sorry. She's been a little intense about trying to make friends since it's been just the two of us." Sarah should have made an excuse, should have smiled politely and left. Instead, she found herself saying, "It's completely fine. She's lovely and very perceptive." "She's something," he agreed, running a hand through his hair. "I'm Daniel, by the way. Daniel Patterson. Sarah Chen." There was a moment of awkward silence, and Sarah started to make her exit when Emma tugged on her father's sleeve. "Daddy, please. Can Sarah have dinner with us, please? It's Christmas, and she's all alone, and we have an extra chair, and it's what Mommy would want us to do." Daniel's expression crumbled slightly at the mention of his late wife. Sarah could see him warring between proper boundaries and his daughter's desperate need for connection. for normalcy, for something to fill the gaping hole in their lives. "Really, I don't want to intrude," Sarah began. "You're not intruding," Daniel said quietly, making a decision. "If you don't have other plans, we'd actually be glad for the company. It's been a hard year and Emma's right. My wife would absolutely have insisted." He offered a tentative smile. "Fair warning, though. I have no idea what I'm doing most of the time, and Emma will probably ask you 100 inappropriate questions." "I will not," Emma protested, then immediately asked, "Sarah, do you like unicorns? And do you think magic is real? And why don't grown-ups believe in Santa?" Sarah felt something crack open in her chest, not breaking but opening. Like a window that had been painted shut for too long, finally letting in fresh air. "I love unicorns. I think magic is definitely real. And I think grown-ups believe in Santa but call it different things." Emma's face lit up like every Christmas light in the world. "See, Daddy? She's perfect." And so Sarah found herself being led to a table by the window, Emma's small hand firmly gripping hers, chattering about everything and nothing. Daniel followed behind, looking bewildered but grateful, occasionally meeting Sarah's eyes with apologetic smiles that she returned with increasingly genuine ones of her own. Dinner was chaotic and wonderful. Emma dominated the conversation with stories about her kindergarten class, her best friend who moved away, and the elaborate letters she'd been writing to her mother in heaven. Daniel tried to rein her in occasionally, but seemed relieved to see his daughter so animated. Sarah learned that Daniel was a high school English teacher, that he'd been completely lost trying to braid Emma's hair every morning, and that they'd been eating a lot of frozen pizza because cooking had been his wife's domain. "I can braid hair," Sarah offered during dessert, watching Daniel's hopeless attempt to fix Emma's lopsided pigtails. "And I actually love cooking. I live alone, so I end up making way too much food all the time." "Really?" Daniel's eyes held a vulnerability that made Sarah's heart squeeze. "Emma starts back at school next week, and I've been terrified about the hair situation and the lunch situation, and basically every situation." "My daddy tries really hard," Emma said loyally, then added with devastating honesty, "but he's not very good at girl stuff." They laughed, and it felt like medicine. As the evening wore on, Sarah realized she'd forgotten entirely about Marcus and his cruel assessment. She'd forgotten to feel inadequate or unwanted. Instead, she felt seen in a way she hadn't in years, not for what she lacked, but for what she could offer. Her gentleness with Emma, her patience with Daniel's obvious overwhelm, her willingness to show up, even accidentally, when people needed kindness. As they prepared to leave, Emma suddenly turned serious. She looked at Sarah with those two old eyes, then at her father, then back to Sarah. Taking a deep breath as if about to do something very important, she asked, "Sarah, would you maybe want to come to our house for Christmas? We're not doing much. Just cookies and movies, but Daddy and me, we have extra cookies, and it's really lonely with just two people and—" "Emma," Daniel said gently, his voice tight with emotion, "that's a big ask, sweetheart." But Emma wasn't finished. She stepped closer to Sarah and, with the devastating honesty that only a grieving child can possess, whispered loud enough for everyone to hear, "Will you be my new mom?" The question hung in the air like snow suspended in time. Sarah's breath caught. Daniel looked stricken, clearly about to apologize, to explain that Emma didn't understand what she was asking. But Sarah knelt down one more time, taking Emma's small hands in hers. "Oh, sweetheart, your mommy will always be your mommy, always. She loves you from heaven and—" "Nothing changes that," she paused, her own eyes filling with tears. "But I would be honored to be your friend. And friends help each other, right? Friends braid hair and share cookies and show up when things are hard. Forever friends?" Emma asked hopefully. Sarah looked up at Daniel, whose eyes were swimming with tears and something else. Gratitude. Hope. Maybe the first stirring of possibility. Then back to Emma. "Forever friends." Emma threw her arms around Sarah's neck, and Sarah held this brave, little girl who'd turned her worst night into something miraculous. Over Emma's shoulder, she saw Daniel mouth, "Thank you," and she understood that he wasn't just thanking her for dinner or for kindness to his daughter. He was thanking her for showing up, for staying, for seeing their broken little family and not running away. 3 months later, Sarah would teach Emma how to make her mother's favorite cookies while Daniel attempted to follow the recipe and made them all laugh. 6 months after that, Emma would be the flower girl at a small ceremony where Sarah officially became part of their family. Not as a replacement, but as an addition, another person to hold love and memories and hope. And years after that, Emma would tell her own children about the Christmas when her mom went to heaven and sent Sarah to find them in a restaurant, because that's what love does. It finds ways to continue, to grow, to heal. But on that December night, Sarah simply held a little girl who needed her, exchanged numbers with a man who looked at her like she was an unexpected gift, and walked out into the snow feeling like the luckiest rejected blind date in history. Because sometimes the worst moments crack us open just enough to let the right people in. Sometimes we find family in the most unexpected places, and sometimes a little girl with braids and a missing antlered reindeer can see exactly what we need before we even know we need it ourselves.